this is a risk assessment document or tool. This is a document that you start creating the moment you have the go-ahead to work on the project, and it sort of stays with you all the way along, just to record everything that you see as a potential risk to your project, and I have to, no matter how unlikely, really, but just to record it all, so that it really just, it helps you to think of it and think through all the what would potentially happen in that case, and what are we doing to prevent that form of risk from impacting the goals of the project. So this can be a bit of an odd thing to try and do if your mind doesn't work this way already, if you're not sort of, I guess, a natural pessimist. But it definitely gets you thinking about how you would react long before a failure is in the works or about to explode. So this is really a very, very simple tool. You list, the first item here is the risk event. So what's the risk we're dealing with? Probably the easiest one to start with here. We have, in this case, we were creating digital tutorial items for library instruction. So if students dislike it and aren't willing to use it, the impact of that would be that instruction would not get to the students. What I didn't put on here, and I should have, additional impact would be probably the library not looking so great in the eyes of our students if we create something that they hate. Then you list your impact, 5 being absolute catastrophe and on down. And I think this is an actual working risk assessment. And I think it's funny, a first risk, which I thought was if the instruction was impossible couldn't be translated into digital media, that impact would be 5. But if students hated it, it would only be 4. I don't know what I was thinking there, but it's an art, it's not a science. So that impact on a scale of 1 to 5, probability of that risk occurring as far as you see it. Again, I think this is more of an art than a science, but here I said less than 1% because I am confident in my ability to create things students will like, apparently. So again, your team members can modify these factors too. So if they disagree with your assessment, that's a good talking point. Mitigating action is what you're already doing and what you're planning to do to mitigate this risk event occurring. So in this case, we said that we would test the media we create with our student employees to see if they hate it. I think that might give us a clue. Do our best to make sure it's interesting, quick, to the point. Focus on using the media as an aid to instruction rather than a total replacement. And we also said that, we'd stay in close contact with the instructor and TAs and the reference desk to try and gauge student reaction so that we'd know if this was approaching. And they would use the teaching tools in a face-to-face session if they weren't used independently. So we're sort of accounting for, okay, if they absolutely hate it, here's all the things we can do to try and manage that risk. And a contingent action is, what are you going to do if it happens? So you've done all you can to mitigate, but it still happens anyway. What are you going to do? In this case, I said, well, we'd seek feedback and try to find out more about what we did wrong, and then go back to our regular library instruction if this fails. So this seemed, I should go with one that I thought was really likely. Right, my probability 100%, material is not accessible. And I was really expecting, because the tools we were using aren't well known for accessibility, that was a serious risk, especially given we are legally required to make sure that our materials are accessible. So the impact is that not all students would be able to benefit from that material. Additionally, the other risk impact is that we could be sued, actually. So the impact, I don't know why I thought that. Oh, I know why I thought that impact would be low. We get sued and the impact is 2. And the probability was 100% that this was likely to happen. So the mitigating action here is that we would talk to our local expert on these things and get advice from her about what we should do to make sure our materials are accessible. And the contingent action on the presumption that this would happen, so I'm already prepared with a contingent action, is that we prepare non-flash and accessible materials as part of the process. So I actually built that in so that the scripts and everything were going to be created at the same time in a completely accessible format that we'd be offering at the same time, so that everybody would be able to access them. So there was a risk that was early identified, came up with a plan for how to approach it, and it's all, you can see the whole process listed there in my risk assessment statement. Another softer risk, other librarians becoming frustrated because they feel left out of the project because we only were working with a handful. I said that the impact of that would be that it hurts the relationships between librarians. You can see I'm really pulling no punches in this document. I'm thinking of absolutely everything that could happen that would be a negative for this project. So, that's part of our risks as well, part of any project. Obviously, my impact's kind of funny, but anyway, that didn't seem to have it. Well, I guess it wouldn't have that huge impact on the project. I seem to think it was relatively likely to happen. So this is where we said our mitigating actions, that we would be pretty transparent about it and talk about what we were doing, and potentially do another project with anybody who felt that they wanted to do something similar. And the contingent is that we would expand the project at a later date if we were in that situation. So you can see how the thought process happens here. What are we going to do in that case? So that is a risk assessment document. It's really pretty simple, but the thinking behind it is the real work.